Hi everybody, happy Travel Thursday. So if you've been following my channel, you know I talk a lot about EFT tapping, which is a mind-body technique to heal and move yourself through a breakup so that you can come out on the other side, rebuild your confidence, and feel better about your life again. But I also talk a lot about solo travel after a breakup. I talk about why it was helpful for me, and also I give you some tips and things that you can maybe avoid so that you don't make some of the mistakes that I've made in the past. So here are some considerations. So first of all, some people might say it's a dumb idea to travel after a breakup. And hear me out on this because people heal differently. For some people, it's better to be, nurturing themselves inside and they're, in a place where everything is totally familiar. But for me at that moment, that I, for example, moved to China in the past, or I've gone to different places, I needed to have a sense of adventure and purpose that I was so deeply lacking in that moment of my own pain. And this is why, for me, it was helpful to also kind of show myself what I was capable of, get to know some new people, feeling like the world was new and amazing again. And like that was something that I had really lost after, heartbreak and everything like that. So let's think about a couple considerations that maybe might help you. So first of all, when you're going to plan a trip, not every place is the right place. Just because you've always wanted to go to Paris doesn't mean you should go to Paris after a breakup. There's some other things that you need to think about. For example, do you need rest and relaxation on a quiet beach somewhere, or maybe in the mountains somewhere, for example, by yourself, where you can calmly reflect and journal? Or, maybe you're in a place where you want to be able to have adventure. You want to go surfing. You want to do, mountaineering. You need to do horseback riding. Whatever it is, it's important to think about these kind of activities and okay, do I want to be around people? Do I want to be around crowds of people? For some people who are extroverts, maybe they really, really love, being around excitements and they want to go running with the bulls or something like that. And for other people that are introverts and maybe need a little bit more introspection, that would be an absolute nightmare and not helpful at all. So you want to think about this. The other thing is do you need a challenge? Sometimes people, decide to start doing hiking or start doing a new class or, take tango lessons or something like that. They want to go have a challenge and something to kind of, demonstrate to themselves that they're starting something new and kind of moving themselves forwards. For other people, maybe they don't want that kind of testing at all. Maybe they're having enough challenges in their life at the moment, trying to get through things, and they just want to have something relaxing self-care, maybe, do a photo class or something like that. The other thing is is this a time where you want to do something safe? Let's say you're a tennis player out normally. Do you want to go somewhere else and do that? Or is it the time where you want to try something totally new and get outside of your comfort zone? These are all really, really important things to consider. The other thing is geography is a big one, because like I said, just because you've always dreamed of going to Paris doesn't mean if for example, you're a native English speaker, that would be the best place for you. You need to think about do you have a comfort zone when it comes to being in other countries where you don't speak the language? Because for a lot of people, if they're already kind of, hurting and feeling isolated, putting themselves in a situation, for example, like going to Tokyo, where maybe they don't speak Japanese and it's very culturally isolating for them because they don't feel like they can communicate, that can actually make you feel worse after a breakup when you're already kind of sensitive and, feeling rejected anyway. So the thing is that, if you are a native English speaker, for example, maybe if you're in the US or Canada or something, maybe going to the UK, someplace in Scotland or England or, or Ireland or whatever could be a good starting point. But maybe if you are from Spain or something, maybe going to Mexico or Argentina or, a country that has where they speak your language, it could be a good consideration. Of course, many places in the world, people in touristy areas especially, generally communicate in English, so it can make that easier. And it's important to also ask yourself maybe you're going to a place like Croatia where you don't speak Croatian, but everybody there speaks English in the tourist areas, and it's a country that caters to tourism a lot. So It's a place where you would be totally fine. So remember, like, don't let that stop you just because you don't speak the language of the country. There are many places where, I mean, even for example, I mean, when I went to Istanbul, like, a lot of the touristy places speak English. And that's another consideration that you need to factor in as well. Like, do you want to be around touristy places? For some people, they would prefer to get completely off the beaten path and, go into some remote little village and stay in an Airbnb. And that's totally fine. But then you also need to realize that by getting outside of the tourist zones, you're probably going to be isolating yourself even more, and you're going to encounter some language challenges. However, it's much easier than it used to be, because now we've got Google Translate app, which can has an AR, like an augmented reality overlay, so that you can read menus in other languages, which is fantastic. The other thing is it has a voice function where you can talk into it and then it will play what you just said to somebody in another language. This was an absolute lifesaver for me in Greece, at a hostel where there was a little old lady who was the hostel owner, and her son was managing everything for her, and I wouldn't have been able to speak. It's like, the saying, it's all Greek to me. Yep, that was real. Also in Albania, I've used Google Translate. It's fantastic. So also I recommend, always having a SIM card or something like that, so that you can use these kind of apps to be able to navigate yourself around and feel like you're capable and empowered. But just because, you maybe don't speak the language, keep that in mind, that sometimes in the touristy places, if you're around the Colosseum or something like that, people would speak English to you probably. Whereas if you're in some tiny village in the middle of Sicily, they probably wouldn't. On the other hand, some people will tell you to completely avoid all touristy areas. I would not do that, because I know this. I used to be like this when I was in my younger backpacking days in my 20s, to kind of like, I'm not going to go there because it's touristy and everybody likes it. But yeah, but you're there as a tourist, and like, okay, I know that there's the traveler and tourist, kind of argument or whatever. But the fact is, you're still a new person in another country. And some of the best things that you can see, like the Colosseum or the Louvre, for example, or Big Ben or whatever, these are tourist activities, and you have to get over it, because if you're showing up with authentic appreciation for the place, there's nothing wrong with being in a touristy place if you want to see these things. So that's some of the things that I would start off by considering, language and culture. The other thing is, like, for example, be aware that, for some people, it can be a really exciting thing to go be around new cultures and experience new things. And for other people, having a culture that is so different from their own can really be a frightening thing. And so, for example, like when I moved to China has so many different customs and habits and things that not everybody understands, and especially between East and West, there really are a lot of cultural differences. Some of them are, very normal and manageable. Other ones can be kind of shocking. And so it's important to, when you're choosing the country that you want to go to analyze this. Anyway, do you have any more tips? Did you find this helpful? So if you want to learn more of my travel tips for, traveling solo after a breakup, or you want to learn more about how EFT tapping can help you heal through your breakup and also rebuild your confidence afterwards, go ahead and give me a like and a follow, and give me a comment and tell me if did this resonate with you or not. Okay, see you later.